Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke, and today's guest is Suzanne Morais. She is a certified transpersonal and spiritual hypnotist. Her work often utilizes the law of attraction and spirit guide connection to move her clients toward living in alignment with their purpose. In this episode, we'll take a look at entity attachments, what they are, how to recognize and ultimately remove them. Suzanne, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Johnny. It's nice to be here, and I'm excited to share a little bit about this topic.
Entity attachments. I've got some ideas about that, but go ahead and tell us, what is an entity attachment, and more importantly, how did you discover them?
Okay, that's a great question. Entity attachments are really non-physical beings or energy that attaches to a person's aura or energy field. There's different types of attachments. There can be earthbound, which are, believe it or not, humans that did not ascend into the light. And they ended up staying on this earth plane and attaching to a human energy field. There are negative energy attachments, which really are attachments that come as a result of big emotions or traumas or big events. And then there's a third type of attachment called a dark force entity attachment. I don't know that I understand the origin of this, but something more malicious in nature as far as attachments go. And how did I find them?
Yeah, how did you find them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wasn't trained in entity attachments when I got my training to become a transpersonal hypnotherapist. This really came to me organically, as so much of my learning occurs. It happened through my clients. It was something that I was recurrently seeing and got me questioning, what is this? Why are these coming up? When you're working with a person in a state of hypnosis, they are the ones that are translating what they are feeling or sensing in regard to energy or emotions or an experience. So I'm not a psychic. I'm not leading them in any way. They're having the experience. And I would say 70 to 80% of my clients have some sort of attachment.
That many?
Yes. And I would say more than one. And they're the ones who sort of identify this attachment. They become aware that they are feeling this. And you can do that more accurately in a state of hypnosis when you get out of your conscious mind that's busy and distracted. And now you're more focused in that subconscious part of your mind where there's some higher knowing. Probably the most notable story that got me searching where I needed to figure this out was a woman who had come to me. She had been to doctors. She had explored other things, but was sensing a state of dissociation from her body and a lot of brain fog and just not really quite feeling like herself. So that's why we were working to see if we could find the emotional or root cause of what these feelings were. And somewhere during the session, she had an awareness that there was some energy that was a part of her that was not hers. And when we started to interact with that energy, it indicated that it was the dead wife of my client's current boyfriend. This woman did not want to pass and attach to my client's energy field because she wanted my client to take care of her children. She desperately did not want to go into the light. She wanted to stay in this energy plane with her children. And that sent us both spinning. I hadn't heard of entity attachments up until that point. And that's when I thought, okay, I need to learn more about this. And I did.
Interesting that you mentioned the earthbound type. I interviewed someone, actually twice, Rob Goutreau, who is a medium, and he works with psychic investigations. I asked why these beings stay rather than go into the light, which you just mentioned. And he said they had reasons for staying here. They had a choice. And it's because they choose to stay here. One of the earthbound ghosts that he came across was John Wilkes Booth. And apparently he haunts the gift shop of the theater where Lincoln was shot. And his reason for staying behind was that was his proudest accomplishment. When you talk about the woman that entered your client's body as an attachment, it kind of reminds me of what mediums deal with when a spirit comes forth and they give some kind of evidence. Do you see a parallel there?
I can't say for sure because I'm not a medium. What I do understand about this is that for earthbound entities, A lot of times it's that they had some sort of traumatic death, right? They might have died by an accident. They might have died unexpectedly. They might have wanted revenge for their death. They might have had an addiction, like really, really enjoy their alcohol and didn't want to go into the light because they want to stay and continue to drink their alcohol. So there are various reasons why they attach to a person, and similar to a medium, you can interact with them. I can ask questions to my client and ask my client to speak on behalf of them. And then the client can give them voice. What I think about earthbound spirits is that their intentions aren't always malicious. They're not here to kind of mess things up, but their attachment always has less than positive consequences for the client.
So we talked about the earthbound type of attachments. What are the most common attachments? Is it the earthbound or not necessarily?
I think the most common, like what I think I see in my office every day, are these energetic attachments that result from other people's energy or from trauma in our own lives. Think about this. Victims of sexual abuse, from what I can tell, almost always have an attachment. And that attachment isn't an earthbound energy, and it's not a dark force energy. It's just a really negative, heavy energy. If you understand that we exist as energetic beings, that negative experience created a negative energy force that we're holding in our energy field. And it kind of blocks energy from flowing in through our chakras. It blocks us from being able to live as fully as we would like. And it can create even illness or disease or mental illness. I would say that this is what I most commonly see. And so any kind of traumatic event from our lives, any kind of fear-based event, maybe even mom's tremendous anxiety growing up, right? Somehow got attached to your energy field, feels like you until you get into a state of hypnosis and you're like, wait a second, I've been carrying mom's stuff around all this time, and that really wasn't even mine. So therefore it can be released. I don't really advertise that I work with entities because I think it could freak people out. I just recognize them and I help people clear them. And I think clients come to me for all kinds of reasons. A popular one is I'm an anxious person, right? Or I feel sadness. I always encourage people to see a doctor if you've got some sort of physical ailment coming up. When we're doing this, I have them sort of focus inward and identify whatever this energy is that seems to be getting in the way. And once it's identified, then we can do what we can to release it. So the good news is that you don't have to carry these things around forever. I think they're as common as picking up a cold or an illness. As energetic beings, we can attract attachments, and sometimes they come and go on their own. Traditional therapy can help you get rid of some of these. The ones that are more stuck or more part of your identity, then I would recommend seeing a hypnotist or maybe working with a shaman or somebody who can help move it out of your energy.
It would seem to me that the sensitive type, or the empath for that matter, would be somewhat easy targets for these things.
Yeah. So empaths have more porous energy fields around us. Empaths are here with maybe more of a recognition that we are one than the average person, right? So more connected to people's feelings and emotions, more psychically connected to others. And because of that porous energy field, it tends to make those who are psychic or empathic a little bit more prone to have attachments. So understanding how to protect your energy, I think, is one of the most essential things that actually any human can know and understand. If you'd like, I can share a little bit about that.
Protection is definitely warranted, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Spiritual or psychic protection is very simple. One is, taking care of your own energy body, right? Doing what you can to maintain a high vibration. That's always going to be helpful. Grounding, eating healthy foods, drinking water. Another thing that I do before I work with any client is I have an energetic shield that I imagine is around me. And I simply close my eyes and imagine it, set the intention that this shield is going to protect me from any outside energies that are not serving me for my highest good. I imagine it as a white shield. I fill myself with white light and I set that intention and I clean it with white light throughout the day. For any empath that's listening, you can find lots of information on this psychic protection on YouTube or online. It's often called the empath shield or psychic protection. And I think it's a game changer. It really makes life a whole lot easier when you're not picking up everybody's emotions.
I would agree. For the empath or otherwise sensitive person, they're like sponges almost. So before we talk about the third type, as if this were one of your sessions online, can you create this shield of white light for both of us, just so we don't get in any trouble?
For us right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So for everybody listening, we can just close our eyes and just imagine that there's white light, purest, most angelic light that you can imagine coming from a high source from above. And we set the intention that light is just going to wrap itself in a nice protective bubble around us, maybe stretching out about 2-3 feet, nice and wide protective bubble. And then imagining a really nice solid surface around it. So in your mind, if it's metal, it can be metal. For me, for whatever reason, mine is selenite, which is a form of crystal. Whatever feels right for you. Then I just stand in my shield and I set the intention that we're going to keep out dark forces, anything that's not serving me for my highest good, any negative energy, so that I can remain in my own energy, so I can show up as myself. And it's really as simple as that.
That seems like it would be good to do as a daily practice too, I would think.
Absolutely. I do it every morning. And I mean, even in my own family, I pick up their stuff. This helps me know what's mine and not have to carry around everybody else's.
So the third type, dark forces.
So dark force energy, it claims that it's a non-human entity with the intention to cause harm, fear, chaos, destruction, death. There are many types, kind of like demons, they say. They claim that they've never been alive in a human body. I'm not sure I really understand them. They tend to have big impact, of course, on a client when there's that type of attachment. My understanding of when somebody has an attachment like this is when you, and I will once again say, see a psychiatrist first, work with a psychiatrist, and then in collaboration with a psychiatrist, if you'd like to see a hypnotist that specializes in this. I don't think many hypnotists do this.
What you're describing sounds a lot like what some of the people that channel and maybe the star seeds, they describe that as star beings that have not very good intentions.
With all three types of entities, they do cause what we perceive to be mental illness. And that's where I was going with, make sure you're seeing a psychiatrist and a therapist, right? Don't come to a hypnotist or go to a shaman for a diagnosis, but in collaboration, this is something to look at. Edith Fiore wrote a book called The Unquiet Dead. She was working as a psychiatrist and came to understand that what she believes is mental illness is actually entity attachments. And now think about the three things that I've just told you. Earthbound entities, right, that might be influencing your behavior. Negative types of trauma, of course, influence your emotions. And then now we're talking about a dark force energy that is really malicious. And, you know, the symptoms or the signs of a dark force entity attachment is really kind of evil thoughts, suicidal thoughts, a lot of self-harm type thoughts. Edith Fiore says in her books that she believes that everybody who dies by suicide probably had a dark force energy attachment.
What can we do in the meantime to prevent them other than imagining being encased in a ball of white light, that type of thing?
The idea behind prevention, it's obvious, right? We want to keep a nice, clear energy field. The best way to do that is to take care of yourself. Sleep, healthy foods, water. The biggest causes for attachments is actually alcohol and drug overdose. If you're on drugs, your energy field is not as protective. It's the same as getting a surgery in a hospital under the influence of anesthesia. We don't have any kind of protection. In fact, that's one of the places where they say we're most likely to pick up an entity would be in a hospital. People die in a hospital, and then people are under anesthesia in a hospital. So that's possible. So understanding that we need to take care of our energetic bodies. Once you understand the power of these attachments and understand that it's as simple as raising our vibration and taking care of ourselves, it really kind of changes the game, because we can feel a whole lot better when we're taking care of our body. And that's not just in the physical form, but that's in the energetic form as well.
So in your practice with hypnosis, you are able to clear these attachments, at least most of the time.
I feel like 70 to 80% of my clients have some sort of attachment, and most of them don't know what they are. In most cases, we're clearing them really quickly, right at the beginning of a session. The way that you clear them, and first we'll talk how they're identified. And a client in that more relaxed, deep focused state, let's just say they came to see me for overeating. I'll just use that as an example. I'll say, okay, so I want you to imagine scanning your energy field from head to toe, and I want you to feel into your body the part of you that overeats. And then they say, okay, yeah, I found that. Okay, great. Where is it? It's in my heart. Okay, what does it feel like? We talk about that. Then I say, okay, imagine lifting that feeling out of your body. And now what does it look like? Does it have any kind of shape, form, texture? And then they describe it to me. I really wait for them to confirm what it is, but I have some clues that I've seen just from redundancy. What I have started to recognize as an entity is usually it's dark, it's usually rough, it's usually heavy. Some of the more unusual ones are a ball of yarn. I've seen that so many times.
Yarn?
A ball of yarn.
So it's got layers and layers. Okay.
And it's all wrapped around different body parts and stuff. Other times it's a rock. Sometimes it's a big chunk of heavy metal. I just had one last week where somebody called it a robot brain. And they said it felt like it was attached to the back of their brain. So they vary all the time. And even with that description, I still don't know if it's an entity. And then I ask questions like, what's its intention? Why is it here? And then the client answers without skipping a beat. It might say to protect me. If it says to protect me, I know it's not an entity, because all of our authentic parts of ourselves are meant to protect us. For another person, that overeating part is some sort of form of protection, probably from something from childhood, to create some distance from somebody. But if it says, I'm here to mess with you, or I often hear them say, they'll say, she thinks I'm protecting her, or it's trying to convince me that it's protecting me, but it's not. And I hear that often. It's so interesting that the clients just kind of come up with this, and it's so spot on to what I hear with other clients. And then I ask a third question, and that's, does it feel like your energy? Does it belong to you, or did you pick it up, or did somebody give it to you? And if it's an entity and those other boxes are checked, then a lot of times they'll say it's not mine, or it's not serving me, or I picked it up along the way. It's fascinating, and people can just really do all this on their own. So it's not relying on somebody else to do this for them.
Would it make sense if a hypnotist like yourself, who by your own admission is not psychic, what if you worked with a medium, or someone like you worked with a medium to kind of figure out more about these entities and what they are? Do you think that's something we may see in the future?
I think you don't need a medium when you're working in hypnosis. The clients are their own medium. And that's the interesting thing. So sometimes, on very rare occasions, when a client comes to me saying, I know I have an entity attachment, when I'm more open about it, then we identify it truly as an entity attachment. Then we talk to it and we ask it, who are you? Where did you come from? How long have you been attached to this client? What are your intentions? Did you know that you're even here? A lot of times they don't even know they're attached. They don't even realize it. Did you know that you died? What was your name before you died? What were the circumstances of your death? So you can interact with it, and I just ask the client to speak on behalf of it. So that's the fascinating thing. Even like talk about being a medium, my clients regularly encounter loved ones during a session who have passed. As an example, I had a client I worked with who lost her daughter and was grieving. It had been years further along in her grief, but still having a hard time. I believe that when someone's in a state of hypnosis, it is a very similar state to what one is in when they're with a psychic, except you become your own psychic. And she was able to immediately connect with her daughter. Her daughter had a sudden death, so they were able to talk about what happened, why the mother was able to get forgiveness because the mother had felt responsible for it. So this happens regularly.
Typically, it would take a practitioner who is psychic or a psychic medium to kind of bring that forth, but someone under hypnosis could go into that space. So that implies that they're going beyond the veil. Am I right?
That's exactly what's happening. And what I think is so powerful about it is that you're not relying on somebody else to do it for you. So there's no misinterpretations, there's no misunderstandings. The person can clearly connect in with that person that they lost. I've never had a client who couldn't do it when that was the intention during a session.
So do they tell you the intention before the session starts? In other words, do they say, I'd like to get in touch with my mom or whoever?
Sometimes people will come to me and say, I've been feeling this way. I've been feeling off ever since my father died, and things just haven't been right. And then I'd say, did you know that you could do this in hypnosis? No, I had no idea. Would that help? Yes. Okay. So in the scheme of all the other things we're going to do during a session, we will also invite in the father. We try to get like proof so that it doesn't feel just like imagination. Like, what signs does your father leave for you? Just the other day, a client was having this type of session, and I asked her before session, I said, does your father leave you any signs that he's with you? She said, well, my husband noticed that ever since he died, we have 2 crows in our backyard. And her father was from another state, so these aren't his crows, but these 2 crows were in the backyard, and he used to feed crows. And so she said, I'm starting to think that this is him. So during session, we had a facilitated dialogue between her and her father who had passed, which was absolutely beautiful. But I kid you not, just outside my office, there were 2 crows on the tree, squawking, squawking, squawking. Never happened before, never happened again since. In fact, I interrupted the session and I said, do you hear these crows? And she just started crying. It was so powerful.
I think it gives a lot of people hope that they don't necessarily have to go to a medium to be able to do that. It also reminds me of what I've been hearing a lot lately is that the veil, generally speaking, is getting thinner. I even had one woman, a medium, say that the veil's gone.
I see evidence of that. My
It's
practice
gone?
has changed. I don't know that it's gone, but nearly every client that comes in these days are having a spiritual encounter of some sort during session, even if they come in for smoking. And then they suddenly meet a guardian angel, or something interesting really happens. And remember, I'm not doing this, right? They're telling me what's coming up for them. So it's really powerful.
Good stuff. I like this. So what happens then when you figure out that you can't remove this particular entity, whatever it is?
Right. I utilize that visualization of light, similar to what we did with the shield. So light is always a great way to heal. So visualizing light moving through their energy field. And I have them imagine lifting that energy up into the light. In most cases, it will go with ease. I have them sort of demand, and indicate that there's no longer consent for this to be a part of their body. Because it's possible that there was some sort of contract or agreement. I've heard clients tell me, oh, yeah, I know exactly when this came in and I agreed to it, believe it or not.
You agreed to it. That sounds like a soul contract.
I think so. And so we imagine it going up into the light. And every once in a while, they don't go. They kind of get stuck. And when that happens, I, as a transpersonal and spiritual hypnotherapist, invite in Archangel Michael. And Archangel Michael is an incredible helper. He comes in with his sword and he works through the client. Oftentimes, when it isn't going easily into the light, Archangel Michael will work with it for a long time. I've had clients that get really still and really quiet. And I, as a hypnotist, all I'm doing is asking questions. So I say, what's happening now? What's happening now? And then they're telling me, well, he's telling me it's going to take a little bit longer. He's saying that there's a lot of attachment in the body and it's going to take a while. And they said that they can feel energy moving in their body. In the case of yarn, they can feel an unraveling. And they said that they can see the pile that he's pulling out. And the yarn goes on and on and on for a long time until Archangel Michael indicates that it's clear. And then I always ask the client to ensure that they see it go into the light. So when it doesn't go, I think I've only had one case of it not clearing that I'm aware of. And when that happens, I have colleagues that work with energy healing. They're shamans. They work with angelic healing, and they have a specialty in removing entity attachments. And I refer them to.
So you've got other colleagues that you can refer them to. That's always good. Now, you also work with spirit guides. So is working with Archangel Michael and perhaps Raphael and several others, which I've heard about. Is it similar to working with a spirit guide, or is it different?
When Archangel Michael comes in, I also ask for the presence of their spiritual team. The clients have told me that they felt like their father who has passed there with them. They felt the presence of angels. The clients are telling me what comes up. So I think that's certainly possible. But spirit guides and angels come into my sessions all the time for other reasons.
Every time I've interviewed anybody on that subject, they always say we all have them, and sometimes more than one. Anything else that we should know on the topic, at least for today?
I think the one thing to know is what circumstances or events attract attachments, like what you might be doing that might lead to them. And understanding, when we talked about hospitals and we talked about drinking and doing drugs, but there's other things like Ouija boards, playing with Ouija boards if you don't know what you're doing, ghost hunting.
Bad idea.
Yeah. Ghost hunting, believe it or not, video games actually
Really?
are a way for energy to come through.
I've never heard that. That's fascinating. Video games.
I think I've seen dark force energy twice in clients, and the one client who had pretty significant attachment, he said that he knows the moment it came into his body, and it was through YouTube. He was kind of dabbling with an astral travel type of video, but he had no idea what he was doing, didn't know how to protect his energy. And he said it tricked him. It told him it was going to help him, and it did not help him. It was very scary.
All right. Suzanne, thanks for coming back to the show. This is very useful information as well as entertaining. How can our listeners find you online?
You can find me at journeyshypnosis.com. My Instagram is Journeys Hypnosis. You can find me on YouTube, Journeys Hypnosis, and Facebook. So reach out if you have any questions. I do work online.
I'll put that link in the show notes and the transcript as well. You've been listening to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. In the meantime, you can find more info on closertovenus.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.